Imagine an ancient ship sailing through centuries with every single part of it being replaced over time. Is it still the same ship? This is more than just a riddle to ponder over a cup of tea. This is the Ship of Theseus paradox, a conundrum that has been stirring the minds of philosophers for millennia. The paradox poses a seemingly simple question, yet one with profound implications. If an object has all its components replaced, does it retain its original identity? Or does it become something entirely new? Our journey today is about exploring the essence of identity itself. We'll dive into the heart of this paradox, navigate through its historical roots, dissect various interpretations, and even see how it echoes in our real world. The paradox is named after the legendary hero Theseus, a figure of Greek mythology known for his exploits and adventures. Theseus, after his many heroic exploits, had a ship that was preserved in the Athenian harbor as a memorial. Over time, as the wooden parts of the ship began to decay, they were replaced, one by one, with new parts. Eventually, every single piece of the original ship was replaced. This sparked a philosophical debate. If every part of the ship had been replaced, could it still be considered the same ship that Theseus had sailed? This question has been a subject of philosophical debate for centuries, intriguing the minds of thinkers from every era. It was first posed by Plutarch, a Greek biographer, in his work Life of Theseus. He pondered, if the ship on which Theseus sailed has been so heavily repaired and nearly every part replaced, is it still the same ship? And if not, at what point did it stop being the same ship? The debate over the Ship of Theseus stirs our understanding of identity and change. It explores the relationship between objects and their properties, and challenges our perceptions of what makes something fundamentally itself. Some philosophers argue that despite the replacement of its parts, the ship maintains its identity due to its form and function. Others contend that the ship's identity is intrinsically tied to its original components, and replacing them results in a new ship. And so, the question arose, did the Ship of Theseus remain the same ship after every part was replaced? Consider an old house, for instance. If you replace every single brick, every window, every door, and every tile on the roof, is it still the same house? Or is it a new house entirely? Some may argue that it remains the same as it holds the same position, the same memories, and the same function. However, others may contend that it has become something entirely different, as not a single original element persists. Now let's take this a step further. What about us, as human beings? We are constantly changing. Our cells are dying and being replaced. Our memories are fading and being rewritten. Our personalities are evolving. Over the course of several years, are we still the same person? Some may argue that we are, since our consciousness continues uninterrupted. Yet others may argue that we become a different person, as we are not the same as we once were. Similarly, consider a community. If every resident in a town were to move away and be replaced by new residents, would it still be the same community? Would it retain its identity despite the change in its inhabitants? Or would it become a new community, defined by its new residents? These questions bring to light different philosophical perspectives. The perspective of continuity over time suggests that despite changes, an entity remains the same as long as there is continuity. According to this view, the Ship of Theseus remains the same ship, and we remain the same person throughout our lives. In contrast, essentialism argues that it is the original essence or the initial state that defines an entity's identity. Therefore, once a fundamental change occurs, the entity becomes something different. Then there's mereological essentialism, which introduces an interesting twist. It posits that changing a fundamental part of an entity alters the identity of the whole. So, if the heart of the ship, or perhaps the heart of a person, is replaced, then it becomes something different. In the end, the paradox challenges our understanding of continuity and change, and forces us to question, when does something's identity actually change? Does it change with the first replaced plank, the first new brick, the first faded memory? Or does it change when there is no original part left? Or perhaps it never changes at all, persisting through time and alterations. The paradox challenges our understanding of continuity and change, and forces us to question, when does something's identity actually change? It has real-world implications. Its echoes can be heard in the corridors of hospitals, the labs of tech companies, the offices of city planners, and the halls of museums. Consider organ transplants. If you replace a person's heart with a mechanical one, are they still the same person? We instinctively say yes, but why? Is it because we believe that identity is more than mere physicality, that it's the continuity of consciousness, perhaps, that defines us? Or do we simply fear the alternative, the suggestion that we lose a part of ourselves with every replaced part? Now let's shift our gaze to artificial intelligence. As we augment machines with more human-like capabilities, at what point do they cease being mere tools and start becoming sentient beings? Does a self-learning AI, evolving with every interaction, retain its initial identity, or does it become a new entity? The paradox also ripples through urban development. As neighborhoods transform, buildings rise and fall, and communities shift, we grapple with the question, how much can a city change before it is no longer the same city? Is it the architecture, the people, the culture, or the collective memory that defines its identity? And what about cultural preservation? When we restore ancient artifacts or digitize old texts, are we merely preserving their identities, or are we creating something new? And who gets to decide whether the restored Mona Lisa is still the Mona Lisa or a clever facsimile? In a world of constant change, the Ship of Theseus paradox injects a critical question. When does change lead to a loss of identity? It's a question that isn't confined to philosophy textbooks, but one that reverberates through our evolving world, challenging us to reflect on what we hold constant as everything around us shifts. As with many philosophical questions, the Ship of Theseus paradox may not have a definitive answer. We've journeyed through the historical roots of this enigma, explored its many interpretations, and seen its far-reaching implications. From the aging of our bodies to the evolution of our cities, this paradox asks us to ponder the very nature of identity itself. Is it the continuity over time that preserves our identity, or is it the essential, original form that defines us? Or perhaps any fundamental change alters our whole identity? Whichever perspective resonates with you, remember that the value of this paradox lies not necessarily in finding an absolute answer, but in the inquiry itself. It pushes us to question, to reflect, and to engage in a dialogue. So, we leave you with this question. At what point does change lead to a loss of identity? We invite you to share your thoughts and navigate this philosophical sea with us.